Welcome to the PinkpillRx podcast, hosted by Katie and Jay Fillmore, where we navigate complex and thought-provoking topics surrounding women with a focus on education. For shorter form content, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at Caters88 or PinkpillRx.
That's KATORS88.
If you enjoy this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review. Zach Watson, aka the Recovering Manchild, is a mental load coach helping men and couples redistribute invisible labor and build emotional fluency at home. Through his content and coaching, he equips men with practical tools to show up with equity, empathy, and accountability. Zach, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you guys for having me. I've been following you guys for probably close to a year now, and it's cool meeting you in person.
Yeah, and we've been creeping your Instagram, and I really love the content that you put out there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, so much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm slowly pink pilling hopefully thousands.
Yes. I think that you are, for sure.
I agree. Even just the vernacular, the vocabulary that you use, which we'll get into later in the episode, but I love a lot of that. It makes it very like logical and just like proper. Okay, this is one thing we have in common. It's very uncanny how much you and I have in common. And I listened to a few podcasts you were on in preparation for our podcast too. Yeah. So you were a teacher, right?
Yeah.
Not anymore, but you were a teacher.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm on my fourth career now.
Okay. Oh, okay. I was a teacher before, and I'm on my second or third.
I think you're going on number 3.
I'm going on
shortly.
3 here.
Did you just put the cognitive labor onto your wife to check to see how many careers you've had?
Oh, man. You know what? Let's make this a fun episode. Anytime I do that, you should check me like that. That was great.
I'll do my best.
I taught math for 8 years, and you taught math and science for 8 years?
Correct. Wow. I'm starting to see the uncanny. Yeah. I taught at 5 schools over 8 years.
Okay.
Never had the same year. Never got to teach the same exact.
Oh, no.
There was 2 years that were close where it was the same 2 math classes, but I had to do a brand new science class. But yeah, a lot of switching.
Yeah, I only had that a couple of years. Otherwise, my bread and butter was geometry. I taught that high school geometry for 8 years. Every year I had at least one geometry class.
Are you also a fan of origami?
I like origami. I had a colleague who was way more into origami than I was, but I mean, I have enjoyed it. I'm more of a Sudoku guy and a Ken guy.
Okay. Yeah. I think you would probably love modular origami, and I'll help you with Shinobi units. They're so much fun.
Oh, I'm going to write that down.
Geometry to geometry teacher. You'll love it.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. I've been out of the game a little while. What's funny, though, is we both taught math. We both taught for 8 years. We both quit teaching when our first child was born.
Yeah, I went on paternity leave, and then after the paternity leave, stuck around for a couple more months, but was like, I don't know how I'm going to be a teacher, be out of the house for 50 hours a week and like manage our life. So I switched over a couple months after paternity leave. So she was about 8 months, and I moved over to software sales where I was a partial hybrid remote.
It's invaluable to be able to spend that much time with your family, especially when they need you so much and you don't want to be missing out on those moments and things. And that's
what career did you switch over to when you left teaching?
So I went from teaching into real estate. I own and operate a real estate business, rental properties, fix and flips, and things like that.
We're also property owners of I'm in the bottom floor of a 3-family right now.
Oh, you got to just stop this, Zach. There's too many similarities. You know, I'm really interested in your journey of becoming more aware and kind of awakened. And I heard you talk about your experience when your wife was pregnant, and I know that was very impactful for you. And I don't know if you'd mind speaking to that just briefly for our listeners, and then also just what was your evolution like after that? Because I have never spoken to another man about him becoming more aware of all the things that women are burdened with that we have no idea and how we play into it. I've never actually heard that from another guy before. So I'd love to hear you talk about that for a moment, if you don't mind.
Yeah. I mean, I think it all starts with probably the conversations I had with my mom younger. I remember my mom asking me, when we shared the news that she was pregnant, she's like, "You're gonna be pregnant with her?" And most people might be like, "What is she trying to say there?" But I was like, "Yep." And what the understanding I already had with my mom was like, that means if she's not taking like ibuprofen, then I'm not taking ibuprofen. If she's not drinking, I'm not drinking. So we like physically, like there was also, we almost went on a field trip to Six Flags, and I told Alyssa, I was like, okay, like I know that you can't go on roller coasters, so I won't either. And that was one of the few times she's like, no, I need you to enjoy that roller coaster for me. Um, so in a lot of ways, like what I tried to do is do some version of, I've had some criticism before of like almost like method acting, and they're saying like that it's inappropriate, like takes away the specialness of pregnancy. And what I what I appreciated it was like the burden that it created for me to help me stay aware of my wife's changing circumstances. Like I actually, for a little while, and she's done a great job keeping me in check, of like my ego can get a little out of control, especially when you start getting a following. Um, is I was wearing a fanny pack with a little 5 pound weight in it, because I knew it looked kind of silly. I also knew that she was having a lot of moments of like, how does this like shirt look now that like I'm getting a bump? And like I'm not to the point where like it's clearly a baby bump and it just kind of looks like I'm overweight, and this shirt looks stupid. And I was like, well, the good news is I also look stupid with a fanny pack on. And if I don't tell anyone what's in it, then I just look weird. There was a moment I remember when she said, "Are you just doing this so that you can say and like get a bunch of like pats on the back for being a great husband and like tell people there's a 5 pound weight in there?" And so I decided to not tell people unless they asked. I was gonna make a video about it, and she said like, "You're just doing this online for clout, aren't you?" And I was like, I may have been, but now I can't, now that I'm being called out on it. So for all 9 months, I really didn't share about those things until she was pregnant. I feel like I would have got my following about 9 months sooner if I'd been sharing those things. But it was good that I went through that exercise. I think of I didn't have the words for it yet because I hadn't read Fair Play yet, but I was discovering a lot of the invisible labor that she was doing, the awareness that she was doing. I remember going to a bachelor party and saying like, oh, like if she were going to a bachelorette party, like what could she drink there? And I stepped a little bit outside. I didn't drink it all, but I had like energy drinks or something. I just had like a stupid amount of sugar, which probably would have also not been good for the baby. But similar, like I remember looking up like, can a pregnant person drink O'Doul's, so like a non-alcoholic beer or something? So like even I was kind of forcing myself to do some of the cognitive and emotional labor that she was having to constantly do, managing her body and what she was putting in it.
Wow. Did you do anything for labor?
So I have a tendency to faint. So my big job for the day, besides like meeting whatever her needs were, was like to stay super hydrated and like well fed. Because if I'm like I faint when I haven't eaten enough. So my job all day was to have my own snacks packed and her to not think about it, so that I could be there to cut the cord, and like not be a hazard in the delivery room. I effectively did that. I was scared that I wasn't going to make it, because I get my mom, whenever I'm hanging out with her and we end up talking about like doctor or like medical things, she's like, Zach, you getting woozy? And I'll have to respond to that. But I did not get woozy at all in the delivery room. So that's about the closest I can say. I was taking care of myself as much as I could without being a burden to her, I think.
Taking care of yourself so that you can take care of things for her. Because if you go down, then there's a whole person that would be providing all kinds of stuff for her that now can't.
And she didn't have to worry about making sure that you had snacks too and all that stuff. You took care of that yourself.
Okay, so you went through this pregnancy journey with your wife as much as as much as you can.
Yeah.
And then how did that impact you after? Or what was your next step, or what did that lead you to next in your process of becoming the type of person you are now?
You mean my recovery from being a man-child?
Yeah,
Been waiting for you to drop that one in there. I think going into paternity leave, I think I was grateful that I had really great role models. It was a really small school. So the last school I was at there was one of each subject. There were like 5 of us teachers, and the English teacher. There were 30 teenage girls in there, and they had all gone through some kind of trauma. So it was a very specific, like, alternative school. And the English teacher, about 6 or 9 months prior or something, she had gone on maternity leave, and the expectation was kind of set like, okay, see you guys in like 3 months, bye. And we didn't really talk about it. There was 2 of us were guys, 3 of us were girls as teachers. And so I was just like, oh, that's just how parental leave works, is you just say goodbye after, you leave your lesson plans, and then you say goodbye for 3 months. So I had a great role model in that, the expectation was I got to just focus on being a parent. And I think that was I recently gave testimony for a bill that we're working on passing in Massachusetts, to give paid maternity and paternity leave to all teachers. And that is not an experience that many people have, of like having the father take that time. So I feel like a lot of it happened along the way. And interesting enough, there were a lot of moments when I was kind of sharing like fatherhood for the first time on TikTok, is definitely where I started too. And our child she was not easy. And I remember sharing a couple of things just on like Facebook, and remember one of my friends reached out. He's like, why are you asking for so much attention? Like, this is weird. Like, why do you keep sharing all this stuff? And I remember getting such wonderful messages from like random people I barely knew in high school saying, this is super refreshing. Like, thank you for sharing this. Fresh parenthood is really hard for so many of us. And then there's some people that just have easy kids. And so I think getting the feedback from those posts, and then, posting on TikTok, and all of this, I think I went from about 2,000 followers to almost 50,000 in about a month after I made one video was talking about the 6th S that we discovered, which was mom's smell, is putting her t-shirt over my shoulder helped soothe our newborn, versus like the other 5 were not doing the job. But they always call it the 5 S's, not the 6. And then there's another video where I was talking about my 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. shift, trying to be with our newborn while my wife attempted to sleep in the other room. And a lot of people jumped in the comments saying, like, are you not feeding your child? It was a little bit of a rage bait video, which I didn't know at the time, but it was of my newborn crying in my arms. And I said, the pain in this moment is not of me hearing her cry. It's knowing that Alyssa expects me to go wake her up, even if she's only been asleep for 45 minutes, to breastfeed her more. So I think a huge part of my growth and like perspective that I've gotten to the pink pilling that happened to me, I think was in the comment section of a lot of moms reaching out to me and either thanking me or talking shit back to me and pointing out like where I was stumbling. And then I think the next big part of the journey over my shoulders, the fair play method. Mid 2022, I started talking about implementing the fair play method and trying to understand mental load. And then the first couple of videos talking about, I think I just added mental load for my wife. Those really exploded. That was part 1 in December 2022, and we're on part 320 today.
Yeah, I'm excited to look back at some of those too. This seemed like I wonder where I'm going to see myself in some of those. I know it's there. I think there's a lot of like humor there, right, in some of those, but I think you're also displaying, messages about what is true in there as well.
Yeah, and I think one thing I really appreciate about what I see with a lot of the short videos where you guys are talking to each other, is, Jay, I think like you display some vulnerability of like, oh, I didn't know that. Damn, that's kind of fucked up that like things are that way. And I think the reason that they're really intriguing, I think they're valuable, is when you guys are talking, is like there's a certain level of vulnerability and like coachability that shows up, and I feel like that's one of the things I strive for. I know that comedy helps dampen some of the hard messages that I send to the other guys, but I think vulnerability is the ideal way to kind of dampen some of those messages so they can be received easier.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to go kind of out of order. So, like, your content that you create is described, like, I've heard it described as more palatable for men because you kind of foreground your own mistakes first. So, like, how do you to keep that tone of vulnerability in your work? Because it's a difficult space, kind of like you're alluding to be able to stay in.
It was easy at the beginning because I felt like I was brand new learning things for the first time, like just understanding mental load. It's gotten harder as I've gotten higher and higher into the series. So, probably part 150, close to 200, I was like, okay, I can't keep making all the same mistakes. It's like I have to be better because I can't have the people that found me at part 110 and be like, damn, Zach, you still suck at part 200. Um, so it was definitely easier on because like I didn't have as much evidence that I was working on it this whole time. I think so. Like part 320 that I posted last night. I posted a picture of we had a birthday party for our kid the other day, and I just labeled like all of the different kind of labors that, and I didn't say who it was. So oftentimes what I end up doing a little bit more today is I'll just label things for what they are a little bit more objectively rather than saying that I'm screwing up, rather than saying who's owning what. It tends to be a lot more, it's like a 90-second vocabulary lesson every time. So it's a little bit harder to be vulnerable also because, I a year and a half ago, I left my sales job to do this and pursue this full time. I do also know that it's encouraging every time that I do post something vulnerable in the community of men that I work with, that they typically, affirm me and like appreciate that, like, oh, I know I signed up for Zach's program, but he still screws up too, and like, doesn't always isn't always 100% at implementing the things that he encourages and coaches us to do. So I think sometimes it's like reminding myself of the creators and the coaches that I love. Um, I find it so affirming when they're still not doing everything that they coach and that they preach, and that they call themselves out. But honestly, the way I can stay vulnerable today is thinking about the other people that are being vulnerable and contributing so much more to me because they're being vulnerable, rather than like preaching from atop the hill and looking down on the rest of us.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a psychological or sociological term for that, but that I feel like that's a very human experience to be impacted by somebody else's vulnerability more than they're like them speaking from a position of like a platform or influence or I feel just that I think when you see somebody else's humanness, it's inspiring to you, and maybe we don't have as much self-condemnation in our own humanness when we hear humanness from somebody else.
I'm betting that it helps us regulate some shame that we might have. Um, because I think there's so many moments when I'm doing the thing that I teach people not to do. And then when I'm able to, I think the most vulnerable post that I've done this year was unpacking a little bit of my own sexism and racism uh, right after the Academy Awards. And we watched Ariana Grande, and I can see her face. I can't remember her name, from Wicked. And they sing the duet, Defying Gravity. And I was recognizing in my own head, like, all the judgments I had about both of their Cynthia. Um, I was acknowledging all of like the internal judgments that I had on both of their appearances, and like also being disgusted by myself that those were my judgments, on how skinny they were, how much how much how large they were, how much jewelry they were wearing, like the complexion of their makeup and like the complexion of their skin. Like that was probably the hardest video that I've made this year, but at the same time, I knew that it was probably really valuable because I'm hoping there are other people, especially guys, that were having some similar moments of self-reflection. And so I know those ones are like the hardest for me to make. And I'm going to go kind of off track for a second in that I think some of the hardest videos for us to make as content creators are probably also the most valuable, even if we don't get the most like response back. And I think I've been on a Kendrick Lamar kick since the Super Bowl. And I think that his best album is probably one of the least valued ones, which is Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. So for anyone that doesn't know him, his big one was Good Kid, Mad City, and then To Pimp a Butterfly. He talks about like his fame and like how he was coming into new rooms of people. Good Kid, Mad City was very much about how he grew up in Compton, and then Damn was like his really high award-winning one. It was very about like his ego and going towards damnation or towards like liberation. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is him talking about how he cheated on his wife and he went to therapy. And I thought, and it was also the largest space in between his albums, where the album starts off with, "I've been going through something, 675 days. I've been going through something," and then you can hear his wife saying, "Tell them," and it's his journey through therapy. And I relate so much to the amount of space and time. I know that sometimes when I take a lot of time in between videos, like probably the next one is probably the hard one, or it's like a throwaway video that I just need to make to like get back into a vulnerable state and share on the internet.
You know, this is my own bias probably, but I'm just like shocked that there's men that participate in what you do in your coaching. And I think it's mind-blowing to me, just because a lot of the comments that we get from men, at least on our content, typically is pretty negative, and usually it's, positive more so from women, although we have gotten messages from women about like their spouses or significant others who have listened to the content and has been changing for them. But I'm curious, how did you like transition and be like, okay, there's a need here and I want to step into this space and I want to coach men about mental load?
So probably like first 50 videos of that mental load series, because as any good content creator, we make one video that goes viral and you got to try to remake that same video.
Yep.
The part 0 of the mental load series got like 100,000 views, and I was like, all right, I'll make a part 1, and that hit 6.4 million, even though I said it was part infinity in the hook of it. And then like the first 10, almost every single one got 1 million. About a couple months later, like going on like part 50, I got a ton of response from women saying like, can you make stuff to like help my husband? Like, can you make materials? Can you make education? And so I started off with like looking at like, maybe I should do a book club or something, and I'll just like invite people, we'll read through it and we'll talk through it. And 91% woman audience, as you can imagine. I'm sure you guys are somewhat similar.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this aspect of it as I was getting this really, I kept having a non-epiphany, like a blind spot in my head of like, oh, I have an all woman audience, and not 91%, an all woman audience. I was like, I can't sell anything to these women. Like, I'm preaching to the choir. There's nothing I can teach them. And then one day someone at random said, well, it sounds like you want to help guys. I was like, but I don't have any guy followers. And they're like, you said 91%, right? So then I did the math. I had about 250,000 over 2 platforms. I realized, 9% of 250,000 is like not an insignificant amount of people. Like 25,000 men are following me. So when I realized I actually had men following me and that 91% is not equal to 100%, dumb math teacher, I realized that I wanted to work with men, which also I got significantly more palatable, because at that point I was still kind of shit talking men and being like, I'm great. You should probably listen to me. Um, you should probably stop doing the shitty things that you're doing. And so I kind of changed the vibe and the tone of a lot of the things I was saying. I definitely my ego got to me a little bit, and I got a little bit away from the vulnerable, because the first two posts were an example of where I think I just added mental load for my wife. So that was how I ended up starting with that. And I think when you get to a 250,000 followers and you're like, I'm not making a penny out of this, I don't know where to go. I got a coach. And so he said, do you want to sell your platform to companies that want to pay you for cheap commercials, or do you want to be a coach? I said, yeah, I mean, I want to help men, I want to help couples. And so he's like, all right, well then we're gonna learn how to solve their problems and work on yourself first. So started offering a one-on-one call, and I was like, no one's gonna pay me $40 to hop on a call for me to teach them about their marriage. That's crazy. And I was right for a month. And then I was like, my feelings were hurt. And I asked my coach, I was like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't do this. And then the first person came in, they paid $40 for an hour of my time to talk about mental load. I found out that their therapist encouraged them to check out my page. Hearing that a therapist was referring them to look at my stuff was very affirming. And then my coach said, all right, have a coaching package ready to sell for when the call goes well. And I got my first client that day. And then about six months later, a couple of viral videos later, and probably 40 consult calls later and a couple new clients, I decided to make the plunge and go full time. And I think Fair Play has been a really great framework for teaching and encouraging the guys to shift their blind spots about where invisible labor exists. And I'm consistently working on figuring out what the most ideal ways are to teach them.
And Fair Play, just for listeners, that is a book, and that's also a method, right? Yeah. Okay.
For the sake of the rest of our conversation, maybe define what the Fair Play method is about. Maybe define what you mean by mental load for those who maybe haven't heard those terms before.
I usually break down. I start with invisible labor, sort of an umbrella term. Under invisible labor, I look at it as three things: domestic labor, cognitive labor / mental load, and emotional labor are sort of the three buckets that I go from that umbrella. Domestic labor, you can catch on a camera, you can see it happening. It's folding laundry, it's doing the dishes, it's mowing the lawn. Then there's the mental aspect, there's all the thinking that goes on. It's the calculating, it's the remembering to do things. That's mental load, that's cognitive labor. And I think similarly, a lot of people, when they're up at night, they're thinking about things, they're often mental load is probably on their brain. Similar, I would say, for within your professions, when I'm often talking with men and trying to explain it to them, and or when women are DMing me, how do I explain this to my husband? I'll often say, if you can notice it in their day-to-day, try to do that. So I think if it were a math teacher I was talking to, I would explain it to them in terms of what they do day-to-day. For a salesperson, it's how often do you go about following up on your clients? How do you adjust the messaging in your emails so that they'll listen to it and not feel burdened? How do you send your summary email with the action items in it so that your client is doing less thinking and more likely to buy your product? All that thinking is all cognitive labor. And then the third bucket, emotional labor, is much more about empathy. So it's thinking, how are they going to receive what I'm about to say? So I think when we're doing emotional labor, we're thinking about the connection that we have with other people, the perception that we think or hope that they might have. It's thinking about, all right, our toddler is not going to eat the rice tonight unless there's butter and cheese. We're running low on Parmesan cheese. I think I have enough time to grab some at the store before, or else they're not going to eat. And then both of us are not going to sleep well because she's going to complain that she's hungry and she just wouldn't eat because there was no cheese on it. So it's considering that emotional impact that it's going to have on other people. I'll pause there because I feel like I see both of your faces are thinking.
No, I thought that was a great.
First.
No, I thought that was a great, very thorough definition, and I got more than I bargained for in a good way. So I appreciate that. I think that's super helpful for our listeners, and even for me to hear it, because so much of it, especially as a woman, is autopiloted. That you're just doing it, you know. And I know for men too, that is also the case, but it's different when it's like domestic kind of work, you know, I feel like. And so to hear all of those areas, it feels very validating.
It's interesting because it just sounds like, oh, we work all the time. Because there's always so much cognitive load, whether it's your career or if you have children or you're married and you have a home. And there's always cognitive load, always emotional load because you're dealing with your children and your spouse and friends and parents and things like that. One of the things that came to mind is you are always just on top of our Amazon subscribe and save. And I don't touch it. And it's not this thing where like there's a lot of physical exertion, but there is so much mental load that goes into it. Like, what do we need this month? What do we not need this month? Shopping around for the best deal.
Labor, I don't know how political you guys get in here sometimes. An emotional labor conversation for me is how do I create a palatable conflict where I invite you guys to stop subscribing to Amazon, which does create more mental load because, you know, switching platforms sucks. And sometimes you can't find the same products that you have. But at the same time, how do you passionately share why we want to make billionaires less billionaire-ish to people that we're friends with or that we're meeting for the first time? But yeah, that is a great example of mental load and like how she manages that, because we absolutely have been doing the same thing. We just switched not long ago, and I know that I discovered new things that were ending up on the grocery list because we don't have another service to completely replace what we're doing, but we bought into a wholesale club nearby.
Okay, I was going to say, what did you do as an alternative?
It's like the subscribe and save. The reason that things like that do so well, the reason that Amazon has done so well is because that 2-day shipping that they've done for years, and also they're making a ton of money off the backs of really hardworking people that are marginalized. But like the subscribe and save, right? The fact that I think there's less thought that needs to go into that service, and that's why we choose something like that.
Yeah.
Because you just set it and somewhat forget it. There's certainly adjustments that need to be made, which I acknowledge is a blind spot because Alyssa has managed it for all the time that we did have it. But yeah, that was a great example. Jay, I'm gonna challenge you. I want to see if you can identify domestic, mental, and emotional labor around something that the two of you might disagree on. Maybe it's a chore around the house that creates problems or disagreements sometimes.
Interesting. Oh, that sounds kind of fun. Although the past couple of years, we've had a very black and white like distribution of labor with these are my jobs and these are her jobs. And so I'm trying to think if we have any left without asking you. It's my mental load question.
Good. Well, what's one right now that she has full ownership of?
She puts to bed our soon-to-be kindergartner the vast majority of the week. Mm-hmm. So, all
right, walk me through what's the physical and
this is interesting. Okay,
specifically around bedtime.
Yeah, well, domestically, like right now, you have to get her toothbrush. You have to get the toothpaste on her toothbrush because when it's anything less than like 80% full, she can't squeeze it out. So you have to do that. You have to make sure that her lights are the right color, and if they're not, she has to reach out to me to change it on the app on my phone. She wants the same song repeated all night, and so she has to make sure that's running properly. Otherwise, she's going to get out of bed and she's going to need that song to be playing on repeat. It's a cover. It's Blood by Mumford and Sons, and she's obsessed with it.
So I'm going to pause for a second. So you're there's no problem in what you're doing. You are melding the three together. So there's the physical tapping of buttons on your phone. That's the physical aspect of it. There's the toothbrush, which is you physically having to squeeze it out for her. You talking about how she can't do it on her own, and I'm betting there could be some frustration underneath it when she tries to do it on her own. I would call that emotional labor. When you're talking about like knowing her the right song, sounds like it's played so often that there's not much thought in it, but I would call that cognitive labor. Like if I came into your house and went to try to do bedtime, like that's a cognitive piece that you would have to hand off to me if I were trying to be a babysitter. Um, and or like knowing the potential tantrum or fallout that could happen if the lights colors weren't correct, if the song wasn't correct, if the cadence of things weren't incorrect, and knowing the emotional impact of the night and the sleep of the collective family, that I would call much more emotional labor.
Interesting. That is that's very interesting because now I'm like, oh, wait a second. I kind of grouped them all together as like one thing when they're actually three distinct things. Even just talking about the Spotify song, because there's the mental of knowing what she wants. There's the domestic of actually implementing it. And there's the emotional of, if there's fallout because it's not working properly or frustration or, you say, Alexa, turn on this song. And then Alexa hears the wrong song and then the wrong song's playing. And now you have,
Our Alexa just turned on.
Yes.
That was the rookie move. Rookie move.
Just say A.
Yeah, I never would have thought to analyze the distinction between those three different kinds of labor within one umbrella of Spotify song.
And for someone listening to it's like, wow, Zach's really picking apart to the bone like what he's saying here. Why the hell is he doing that? Let me illustrate why that's useful to be able to differentiate between those things. So coming back to your question that I didn't really finish answering earlier, what's the fair play? What's the fair play method? So a huge part of implementing the fair play method, which it sounds like you guys do you guys do the fair play method or your own version?
Never heard of it in my life.
I think I'm like mildly familiar. I think that we have accidentally implemented some of these things, but I don't think like not intentionally and not to the full breadth of what it is.
That's perfect for this conversation then. So two key acronyms from the Fair Play Method are CPE and MSC. CPE is conception, planning, and execution. So similar to those, part of the reason I use those three buckets, conception is kind of the emotional labor of caring if something exists. Planning is more of the cognitive labor, left brain, like calculating, figuring out, planning. Execution's typically like the physical, sometimes like a clerical aspect to it. MSC is minimum standard of care. So like, what is the expectation for completing on something? So as we're thinking about, say, bedtime, right? Let's say there's a grandmother or grandparent that's going to come in and do bedtime. There's a good chance they will do all of the physical executive labor, or I know that I'm going to use some sort of heteronormative dynamics here that I see all the time, which is, let's say the husband's handing off to a grandparent and saying like, hey, here's how the bedtime goes. There's very often just the execution tasks are going to be handed off. It's like, you got to play the music, you got to have this light on, you got to probably do the toothpaste for her. I know there's 15 other things, but we'll stick with those for simplicity. If the mental and the emotional is not also handed off and acknowledged, like, this is what will likely happen if you don't stick with this boundary. If you read X amount of books, I know we read 3, and Melissa and I have had a lot of conversations about, let's stick to just 3 so that and then we'll rubber back after the 3. If just execution is handed off and there's no mental or emotional labor handed off as well, then there's other aspects that could be missed in the going to bed routine. So being able to differentiate the difference between the conception, planning, and the execution helps us understand why things are falling apart when they do fall apart. And I think similarly, like when there are guys out there that are just saying like, yeah, sure, I can do that thing. Just remind me.
Yeah, or just tell me what to do.
Actually, I'm going to pause.
Oh, just okay.
Jay, why is it? I'm trying to pink pill you, I guess. Trying to do what your wife does. When a guy says like, "Yeah, I'll do it. Just remind me."
Yeah.
What labor are they offering, and what labor are they offloading?
Okay, they're offering domestic labor, but they're offloading the cognitive labor of it.
Yeah.
Because then
And
she has
or
to
the
remember.
emotional labor. Yeah.
Because then she has to remember.
Yep. Similarly, if they say, just make me a list, I'll do it. What are they doing?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're offering execution, you're offering the domestic work, but you're, again, having her do all the planning for it and all the thinking about it and the making of the list and then giving you the list. So there's even some like actual execution going on because she has to make the list. Yep. She has to come up with the stuff. He's not even coming up with it. She's coming up with it and just handing it off. And he's really giving her a lot of work to do.
There you go. Lessons complete.
We like switched around some labor in our life probably like a year ago. And one of the things that we switched around was I gave you the job of grocery shopping. And you were like, what is this? This isn't just grocery shopping.
Like, oh, okay.
I've got to keep track of what's where. I've got to keep track of what we're running out of, who eats what, who doesn't eat this. Like, it was like so much more than just, I got to put stuff in a cart. It was so much more than that. And I think that was like another area that like just highlighted what you're talking about, because there's so much more that goes into grocery shopping than just purchasing food.
Yeah, that's something that has recently been put onto my plate as of, I think, maybe 4 months ago. We moved about 9 months. Wow, that's a long time ago we moved. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but we're still doing a lot of like, what should we have for dinner tonight? And then it was like either chicken nuggets, rice, mac and cheese, or frozen pizzas. And we'll throw in some vegetables here and there. And at some point, Alyssa was like, we need meal planning. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. And there was a request for me to own it. And I was like, yes, I'll own that. I see where this is a contribution that will also help improve the equality in our home. So as I was meal planning, as I now had to also own groceries, it's been a significant learning curve. Even just how to use the app in the best way, which is like going through your recent purchases rather than searching every item on its own. So yeah, the awareness I have of what's in our fridge at all times is like, I don't know, 50 times what it was in January. I was managing like school lunches, so it was pretty good. My awareness was pretty high on like what we had for food for our child, but not necessarily for like the adult food and like the needs for recipes and stuff.
So I grew up in a very traditional household where dad worked outside the home, mom stayed home and did everything at home. And she also homeschooled, so you add that layer on top of it, and she just did everything. And to me, growing up, I remember always feeling like it really was unequal. Like my dad got to go out and he got to go to work and then come home and then didn't have to, did stuff around the house like that was like dad stuff, like mowed the lawn and things like that. Or like fixed things when things needed to be fixed. But in general, my mom did everything involving the house. How do you approach couples, or what would you say to people who the guy is out working more hours somewhere when the woman is at home doing more of the domestic and emotional labor and stuff like that? Like, a lot of people think that should be fair because he's going out and he's working, but she's home doing the home stuff, and that's fair enough. But I see that it's not. I don't think that it's fair.
Am I talking to that guy, or am I talking to the guy that's his neighbor trying to explain why he should be able to act like that guy?
You know what? You choose which one you think's more effective.
I'm gonna talk to the neighbor guy that's pointing at him. He's like, yeah, look, like he earns all this money and like he should be good. He comes home, like his day is over. Like he should be able to get to play with the he should probably play with the kids, but like that should be enough. What I would say, I mean, the the meme slash trend that always sticks out to me is, I think it's a Daft Punk song or something. Push me and then just touch me till I can get. You know that
Yes,
song?
yes.
So
Oh yeah,
That was a
you
really
guys
good
know-
imitation.
that's what got me.
Can you guys do you guys recall the TikTok trend that I'm thinking of right now?
No, I cannot recall it. I'm sorry.
So it's it's typically a mom. It was a mom trend. She would put her arm up and then she would like go bring her arm to like 8 hours, about 8 hours.
Oh yeah.
And then go 8 hours. And then like when the beat drops and it goes, she just starts like waving her arm in a full circle. And the captions above it are 8 hours of work, 8 hours of work, like teacher, construction manager.
I do remember seeing this now
And then
that you're explaining it.
stay-at-home mom, it's just 24.
Yeah.
So I think when we think about if you were to put together a pie chart of the time specific to labor, and or I think furthermore, if there's a hardcore capitalist that needed to be like, well, she doesn't make any money. She does, because let's try to outsource her job. How about she gets to go work the same exact job that you do, but you're like, I don't want to cook. I don't want to do this. Okay, try to outsource it. I'm gonna get the number wrong, but I know it was above six figures. I think it was like $180,000 if you were to outsource everything that like a stay-at-home mom of 1 or 2 kids does. That's like the economic value that would be placed if you were to try to outsource everything that they do. So one, I would say, if you try to outsource it because they want to have a career too, that's how much it would cost to outsource all of the labor that they do. And then secondly, I would say if you were to be like, okay, all right, maybe money is not the metric because they feel checkmated at that point, and then they tried to pivot on time, is you would say like, okay, how many hours does your job take? 8 hours, maybe 10 with commute, and maybe it's a not fun commute that they somehow wiggle into saying that even the commute's hard. Okay, for the stay-at-home mom, how much time does her job take, and like how much of that is fun too? And so on both the financial and time front, you win that argument.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you. You laid it out for me very well. That's probably, you're good at what you do, huh?
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, if people are interested in what you do and possibly getting coaching, should they hit you up on Instagram? Do you have a website?
Yep, I'll give you guys a link if people want to grab a free console call. They can absolutely jump on, discuss if it's a good idea to work with me. One of the main programs I run is Fair Play 101. I'm working on my own book, which eventually will be my own book, but Fair Play 101, we go through the book, we implement the steps we don't have time for it today, but I walk them through how to beat the do better loop and implement the Fair Play method. The short of the do better loop is it all starts when there's an issue that pops up and there's a fight or a argument that ensues, and then it turns into the guy saying, I'll do better, I promise, I got this. And then he does better for anywhere from 3 days to 3 months. And then the fear and the urgency wears off. And then he goes back to status quo while she is kind of holding on to some resentments. And then there's no arguments. And he's like, oh, sweet, we're good. But her resentment builds. And then you end up back at the top of the do better loop. So that is kind of the way that I see how a lack of understanding invisible labor shows up as a problem. And then we have some different ways that we implement tools to improve on the do better loop and have it be a smaller, more palatable, and less painful loop.
And do you work with couples and individuals?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that there's so many like I don't know if it's vocabulary or it's not methodologies, but like maybe it is definitions because you have, boom, these 3 different types of flavor. Oh, there's this do better loop. And oh, there's this method. There's these acronyms. And it's nice that it's all very like, it's not cut and dried, but some of the elements are. And I think as a guy, or maybe just as someone who is I very, very much like logic, that is just, oh, these are very concrete things that someone might hear of and learn about in the context of coaching, and especially as guys, I think would be very helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah,
it was very insightful. So I really appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you very much for being here
and just connecting in general.
Thank you to the person that tagged you guys in one of the videos that I had recently and prompted me to reach out. I'm glad I did.
I'll put all your information in the show notes and go from there. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I love what you do. Keep up the good work.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great meeting you. I hope for those of you listening, something was intriguing or sparked a curiosity, or you felt affirmed or challenged. Stay educated. Take the pink pill. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review.